Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're awake enough for this session. If you're not, then we hope we'll wake you up. I'm glad to be moderating this session because it's an interesting topic, and it's got even more interesting panelists. You'll see the mix as we go through the panel. We have two fashion companies. We have a book retailer. We have a fast food QSR brand which has recently entered the market, and we have a digital giant in the market, I think, for several years, but which is also evolving as a brand. And I think the theme of the panel is what ties all of these gentlemen together. I'm sorry not to have a lady on the panel. I think that was an oversight. Next time we need to make sure that the organizers take care of that. Because I think that the topic itself is something which cuts across generations, it cuts across genders, it cuts across all kinds of product categories. It's about the relationship between consumers and brands and what goes into creating a stronger connect between the consumers and the brand. I think if you look at the evolution of the retail business, of the consumer retail business in India and worldwide, there are two things which are happening simultaneously. One, in the last 20 years, and I've been now in the retail business for about 25 years, and in those 25 years, the business in India has changed dramatically, but possibly the most dramatically in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. The pace of change has really become rapid. One of the other changes which is happening faster and faster is that 25 years ago, 30 years ago, there used to be a gap between whatever was happening in the more evolved, more developed markets in the West particularly, and in India. There was a gap of maybe 10, 15, 20 years. Today that gap is barely there. In some products it's there, but in other products it's not there at all. It's the same things. Consumers are expecting the brands to treat them in the same way as they would be treated anywhere else. I'll take a small example. If you take electronics, digital products, no consumer in India is happy being behind the times. So if you're looking at an iPhone 6 being launched in the US, it comes to India very soon after that. And if it doesn't come to India officially, it will come to India unofficially. The consumer wants to be with it. Whoever is looking to be with the times wants to be with the times, not 6 months behind the times. Similarly, at the other end of the spectrum, let's say automotive products, there was a time when large automotive companies came to India and launched products which were 10 years out of date. And I don't think that's acceptable at all, at any point of time, but certainly not today. If an Indian consumer is spending 15, 20 lakhs on a car or more, they expect not only to get the latest, but they have expectations of getting even better than that in terms of service provided, in terms of the after sales, in terms of all kinds of other things. And those expectations are actually far ahead of what a Western consumer might have. If you talk about fashion, I've dealt with the fashion business for a long time, and we tend to treat the Indian consumer as somebody following Western fashions. While that is true, I think it's a failure on the part of the industry, not on the part of the consumer, because again, it's the industry which picks up trends late. If you look at brands which are in touch with the consumer and in touch with the market, they tend to pick up the trends very early and be there so that the consumers have access to the trends, the latest trends possible. So I think with that as a backdrop, I would like to invite Mr. Manish Mandana, who's the director of Mandana Industries, to share his experience and his journey through creating, launching, growing a very interesting brand, which he'll talk about. Let me not steal his thunder. Manish.
Good afternoon, friends. We are basically the global licensee for the brand Being Human. It's a Salman Khan Foundation brand. The purpose of this brand is charity from the Star side. And we've been into the textile and apparel business for almost 3 decades now, catering to the high street retailers across the globe. We knew that we needed to enter the Indian markets, the growing consumer Indian market, being one of the youngest economies in the world, or I would say youngest nation in the world, which with a large growing consumerism and brand loyalties being shifting every day, because along with aspiration, there is also value, price, connect, all these aspects. We needed to create something which was different in the crowded space, in the competitive space. So we created the brand Being Human with the 3 key driving forces and the 3 key USPs, which is fashion, charity, and celebrity. This was a unique concept. Not too many people did this. And we had a vision that we needed to create a consumer connect not only within the country, but even in the global markets. As you all know, that global markets are much more evolved than Indian markets, and there the people are going back to nature, going back to ecology, going back to social causes, because they've seen the peak of I would say development. And then, beyond that, you still want to go back to basics and do something which helps the world in a better way. That's how Being Human was born. And, we can say that every product of Being Human that is being purchased or bought by any consumer helps shape up a life or save a life. It's connected to various social causes. Yeah, but at the end, for the love of the celebrity or for the love of the cause, somebody would buy that product once. We needed to create something beyond that. We needed to create an experience and a story around the brand. So if you visit a Being Human store, you would see the design is very repurposed and recycled of the store. At the same time, very modern, I would say modern vintage. We needed to keep in mind that in a growing digital world, we need to be very gadget savvy. We need to be pushing our business also through social media and modern applications. So we are the first brand in the country to launch a touchscreen panel which engages a consumer into looking at the collections that are in the store. He can do a mix and match options with those clothes. He can virtually find out what are the products available in the store. If it is not available, which is the next nearest store where it's available. He can WhatsApp that look to any of his friend or relative to make a decision of buying. So it's easy coming in and easy going out in a short, because consumer is also restless today. He has so many options and he has so much to do within a small span of time, and he needs to engage himself into a brand, and you need to create those engagement devices. You need to create those lasting impressions in the mind of consumer, which makes him stick to your brand. And obviously, the whole idea of fashion from our perspective is not only about looking good, it's also about doing good. We have a healthy collection of organic clothes in our stores, which is also a community which follows, using bio products or organic products, and that's how you create a consumer base for yourself. With the help of electronic touchscreen panel, you can be a part of the Being Human Club and be a part of the loyalty club, which also engages customers into regular feeds about what's happening around the brand. Every event that we do with Being Human is not the typical fashion shows and alcohol and parties, but we would pick up a social event of a blood donation drive or a tea plantation drive or a cyclothon or a eye camp. So these are the activities we are engaging ourselves with the community, with the people, making them believe in the goodness that brand is having around itself, which is creating a sort of loyalty and also a great feel-good factor in the minds of consumer, which keeps them connected to us. So I would say today every business has its own unique selling propositions, and the market is very crowded and competitive out there. You need to create uniqueness in your offerings, in your products, and the kind of business you do in order to attract more and more people and get loyalists. And that's all I would like to say.
Manish, your brand actually probably defines this session where they're saying what goes into creating a stronger human connection with a brand, being human as a brand. The question which arises in my mind is, as humans, we have our positives, but we also have our negatives. And one of the strengths which you mentioned is your celebrity connection. But we also know that there are issues which have happened perhaps in the past. As a brand or as a company, as a business, you also need to protect yourself against the risks which sometimes, personal acts can create to the business. Any thoughts on that?
Well, as everybody knows, the celebrity attached to the brands has a certain baggage behind him, and he's been in the news for those reasons. But let's not forget, he's also the most searched celebrity and most followed celebrity in the country, and probably the most followed individual in the country, almost having 30 million followers on the social media platforms. That itself shows the love towards him from the people. But at the same time, I think these are his own words, these are Salman's words, that this brand has to outlive me and outgrow me. And as I mentioned earlier, for the love of the celebrity or for the love of the, concept, somebody would engage himself or herself once into the brand. But unless that person is not happy with the product, with the experience, with the quality, and the value for money that he's getting, I think consumer is very smart today. He would not engage himself again and again in buying the product. So in a long run, I think the brand has to outlive the celebrity and it's already come out of its shadow in a big way. The way we are growing as a brand in terms of selling points, we are present across 500 locations, including exclusive brand outlets, shop-in-shops, online platforms, international tie-ups. We are also selling in about 16 countries as a brand, and it's the only Indian apparel brand, homegrown brand, which has got such a widespread base, and we are looking at launching another 3-4 markets in the next 1 year. So obviously, eventually it's the business model, it's the experience of the consumer with the brand, around the brand, which is driving the business, and not only the celebrity connect. Each of our stores, we employ one specially abled person. That also, so our brand does not touch, it touches people and touches people's lives. So that's what our brand stands for, and that's what we are continuing to do. And the DNA of our brand is love, care, share, hope, help, and joy. These are the 6 key words which we keep on, embossing on every garment, whether it's on a button or a label. So when you're wearing a Being Human product, you're wearing a value, and it's a great feel-good factor for the consumer.
And I think that kind of sets the context for pretty much everybody else. So let me take a slightly different product category, and it's also, for me at least, and certainly for many other book lovers, it's a very emotive product category. But at the same time, it's also something which has become somewhat of a commodity, particularly with the advent of e-commerce, where you're talking about discounts driving sales over the last 2-3 years. So, Kinjal, from your perspective in Crossword, I mean, it's one of the most established, possibly one of the largest book retailers in the country. It's got to be interesting times, both in positive and negative, I guess.
Well, I think I agree with you. I think this is the question that I've been put for over the last 2 years consistently. But just to put the context right, what I'll just do is to the team here, we now grown to 97 stores in 33 cities. We just opened 10 stores. We have another 8 stores lined up, and we plan to open 8 more stores, which very clearly is telling us that the market is much bigger. Readership is growing. in terms of what we are seeing is our role is very simple. In fact, our vision was to inculcate reading habits. And what we are trying to do with our bookstores is just trying to see how we can increase the experiential level of the consumer when he enters a store. And that is what we're doing through renovation of stores, to kind of repositioning it completely. And we are actually surprised because the consumers keep on coming back to us. In fact, your point of discounting is absolutely valid. So I think in the books category, because the average selling price is much, much lower than apparels, it's been fairly easy to convert consumers to the online space. But what we are getting is, there is a set of consumers who were destination shoppers who used to travel 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers to find a bookstores. What we are seeing is that the destination shopping in books is completely out. So it's become more impulse. So if you look at our store formats, we have adopted the formats very, very clearly. We are the only guys probably with the network and growing in the books category because we very clearly understood the consumer, the buying behavior of the consumer, and we went to where the consumer is rather than asking the consumer to come to us. And that's where we're benefiting. In terms of our biggest USP is the consistency. We've retained ourselves as a bookstore. In spite of the challenges that we faced, be it the recession or the advent of e-commerce when it started, we ensured that we strengthened our book category by giving the consumers much better range assortment, much better display, much better recommendation from our side. In a books category, as you would know, there are thousands of books that get released every month. The buying team's job and our job typically is to curate the right book for our consumers. We can't put in everything in the bookstores. I think that's where consumers have shown faith in us. We have a very unique model in terms of not just books. Books contribute to 60% of our business. But overall, our vision is to build urban centers or build retail centers within the educate, enlighten, and educate category. We've looked at toys as a category, stationery as a category. Both these categories have grown almost 20-25% year on year. Consumers are actually, we'd be surprised, the highest selling toy category is a toy category where average selling price is even higher than apparels, probably 2,500, 2,700. That's Lego. So we are ourselves surprised by what the consumers are looking at, what the consumers are buying. And I think the market is still very big. There's so many cities we go to. We've just opened a store in Bilaspur. We opened Ranchi. We're opening 3 in Bhubaneswar. Cochin, we have only 2 stores. The market can take 50 stores. So I think the market is much, much bigger. The consumers want to spend time in bookstores. They are experience centers, according to me, and our job will be to build the experience centers, and the consumers will keep coming back. Thanks.
So one question before I let you go. We're talking about books again, which are books and related categories, where again, there have been some traditional retailers who've had a very strong presence in certain markets. You know, certain localities, you have a particularly iconic bookstore where the owner actually has a very strong relationship with the, as you said, I mean, you know, you're curating the books, you have to be, you're kind of curating the experience for the consumer. And that's done very effectively when it's an owner-managed bookshop. With a chain across such diverse markets around the country, how do you do that?
I think it's a very valid question. And in fact, that's the only reason why we started franchising. So we are probably one of the first guys who started doing franchise stores way back in 1996. We have 50 franchise stores, and I'm proud to say we are only freight franchise owners. So there are people who own and manage multiple stores for us. And actually, franchising has helped us to kind of build the right connect, because in our category, as you rightly say, when you go to a Gujarat, at least 15% of the books that we sell is Gujarati. When you go to Maharashtra, Pune, at least 10 to 15% is Marathi. Go down south, Kannada. And so I think the product is completely different where what we sell city to city. And that's where franchising has helped. On the own store part, we have 47 own stores now. And we have a very, very strong buying and merchandising team. And very, very strong systems. Being part of Shopper Stop ensures that your systems and processes are absolutely well set. And that has helped us to kind of maintain a very, very strong line of assortment for our consumers and continuously giving them what they're looking at.